Well, we are back for our second installment this season on Upper Left Sports. Zags coming off of their first victory last night over Dixie State, 97-63 at McCarthy Athletic Center. But I'll tell you what, Steve, things get real interesting real quick, and that starts Saturday night for the Zags.
Absolutely, man. This is the second year in the row. You know the Zags coaching staff understands the talent they have on their team, and they're looking to test those teams early. Last year, it was Kansas right out of the gates. This year, second game of the season, this Saturday night, you've got number 5 Texas coming to the Kennel. It's going to be a big game.
Yeah, and the Zags have a 51-game home winning streak. It is the longest in Division I basketball. And I can tell you Chris Baird and his Texas Longhorn team would love to snap that. 3 years. It's been 3 years since Gonzaga lost at the Kennel. I feel like I'm a sports commentator talking about a kicker who hasn't missed in so long. So if the Zags lose, you can blame me. I'll accept it. But we're going to dive into this game a little bit, just in terms of matchups. You know, if you're a Texas fan, we're going to tell you about Gonzaga, what you can expect, the players, the system, the coaches. And if you're a Zags fan, like we have a lot of Zag fans that tune into our channel, we've done a little bit of research that we could to this point with Texas. They are coming off of a victory last night over Houston Baptist, 192-48. So both teams will be 1-0 coming into Saturday's bout in Spokane. Texas is 0-3 versus Gonzaga in history. Last meeting coming 2017 at the PK 80 in Portland. I was at that game. I went to overtime. It was right after that Zags played Florida in that PK 80 tournament where Florida could not miss a shot.
Yeah, it was tough.
Ended up bouncing back, I think, the next night versus Texas. They do win in overtime, 76-71 back in 2017. But let's get into this matchup. And I'll tell you what, on our Gonzaga, season preview, I said that this was my national championship preview. What I think is very interesting is these are two very different, contrasting teams, the way that they want to come out and play. But the other piece with it is that both of these teams are going to grow so much over this season. Texas, because of all the new pieces they have, all the transfers, and this is a very, very young Gonzaga team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got two teams that match up well in terms of talent and, of course, coaching staffs. But you talk about the contrast, and Texas is obviously a veteran-led team. They brought in a lot of transfers this year, but these are experienced guys. And then on the other side, you've got Gonzaga, who is starting a few freshmen as well as a number of freshmen coming off the bench. So a little bit younger team. Both teams are obviously going to be looking to build that chemistry for different reasons there. But whichever team can impose their style in this game is definitely going to have the upper hand. I mean, you look at Texas, they're playing a little bit slower through their first game. Per Evan Maya, they rank 179 in tempo, I believe it was. And then you have Gonzaga coming in at number 9 in tempo. And that's not anything new really for either team. Gonzaga is always looking to push that pace. Chris Baird, when he was at Texas Tech, they are a defensive-first team. So going to be very interesting to see which one can kind of force their style on the other.
And we know Mark Few wants to get out. He wants to run, push the tempo. And so very contrasting styles. Chris Baird said in an interview today when asked about playing Gonzaga, he said, listen, no matter what the scoreboard says, we're going to come out on Saturday with a win because we're going to learn a lot about ourselves. I think both teams can say that. Let's get into really the matchups, and it starts at the guard position. And it was very interesting going into this first Texas game with who's going to be the starters. Chris Baird has said, listen, I got 7 guys I can throw out there that I believe are starters. But there's one guy, and I know Longhorn fans were wondering, like, hey, who's going to be the guy? Who's going to step up, take that shot when we need it? Who's going to kind of run this offense? And watching that first game, it's very clear that it's Marcus Carr. This is a kid that started his career at Pitt, played a lot of meaningful minutes as a freshman, and then ends up transferring to Minnesota, where he was great as well. But watching that game last night, he's that dude for this Texas offense. And I'll tell you what, he's not too bad on the defensive end as well.
No, he's great on both sides of the floor. You look at his season last season at Minnesota. I mean, he averaged 19 points a game, 5 assists, 4 rebounds, was all Big Ten first team as well. So you talk about a senior leader, and he is that guy. He's used to leading a team. Minnesota, of course, did not have the talent around him that this Texas team does. So when you need a guy to go out there and step up and maybe take over a game, he's going to be ready to do that. We saw it first play of that game against Houston Baptist. He, of course, comes off a pick and roll, gets an easy take, to the basket to get the Longhorns going. And he had a couple tough threes that game as well. So very, very good guard. And obviously Texas is a very balanced offense this year, but limiting Marcus Carr will, of course, be a focus going into Saturday.
He is a career 33% as shooter from behind the arc. Did take 5.6 attempts per game over at Minnesota. We'll see if that shakes out the same in this Longhorn offense. And running the show for the Gonzaga Bulldogs this season is Andrew Nembhard. This is a kid that last season ended up working his way into the starting lineup as the season went on, ended up transferring from Florida to Gonzaga. Gonzaga didn't know if they would have Andrew Nembhard last year. It's a piece of this team from the national championship team that kind of goes untalked about a lot. Is I'm not sure that team goes as far as they did if Andrew Nembhard doesn't get his waiver. He was definitely the forgotten piece behind Jalen Suggs. But I'll tell you what, this kid on his own is a heck of a player. He's so unselfish, right? Like, we've seen points in his game that he can score and get buckets at will, but he doesn't have to. And his job this year, aside from maybe doing something in the mid-range I'll let you talk about, is he really does facilitate this offense.
He does. And much like Texas, there's so much talent on this Gonzaga team. Andrew Nembhard knows that. He knows he doesn't have to go out and take 20 shots a night. And he's one of the best passers in the country and one of the best, if not the best, pick-and-roll guard in the country as well, per the analytics on that. So you watch his game. You mentioned his mid-range. I've said it a number of times on the show, but he is a mid-range maestro. You watch him get to the elbow. He'll come off that pick and the roll. When he gets to the elbow, he's a very good decision maker, whether that is attacking the rim. He's got a very nice mid-range pull-up, step-back jumper if he needs it. And, of course, if you collapse on that paint when he comes off that pick and roll, he will find the open man. So, you talk about his unselfishness. Opening game of the season, he gets 5 points, 3 boards, three assists. So pretty quiet game for him. But the Zags still scored 92. So that, again, he knows the talent around him, but he is a guy very capable of stepping up and being that guy in a game when you need him to.
Yeah, I mean, against Dixie State, he scored 5 points, 3 boards, 3 assists. I think that there's going to be several nights that we see a similar stat line. Just don't be surprised, though, if we see a Andrew Nembhard 26-point game or something like that. He's very capable of scoring, but he knows his role on this offense. Now, really with both teams, the guard position is a little interchangeable. And so with Texas, we're going to talk about Andrew Jones. This is a preseason All Big 12 honorable mention, started 26 games last year at Texas. And I think the theme of this Texas team, at least on the national level, is that this is a team kind of like Baylor last year that has a ton of transfers. Are they going to be able to work together? Chris Baird, even though he's coming over from Texas Tech, does have some upperclassmen and some experience. And Andrew Jones really is the poster child of, here's what we do at Texas. I've been here. I've been a part of this program. He's seen the ups and downs. He's been with a couple coaching staffs. But having someone like Andrew Jones to come back and give that veteran leadership is going to be a big deal for this Texas team.
It really is. And he is as loyal as you could ever ask of a college basketball player. You mentioned him sticking through all the change at Texas. So you really love to see him obviously getting a chance to shine on this great team this year. And this is a guy that he shot 36%, I believe it was last year, from 3. But you look back to 17-18, he shot 46% from 3. So this team can shoot, and Andrew Jones is somebody, you take last year out of the equation, he is a guy who can get very hot from the outside. So he's a smart player. He's been around for a long time, so you can count on him to make the right play, and just a very much a player you cannot leave open come Saturday.
And the other guard that he's going to be going against for the Gonzaga Bulldogs is Rasir Bolton. This is a transfer from Iowa State. In the offseason, people are asking, who do you think? I mean, the Zags have so much talent on this year's roster. What do you think the starting lineup will look like? And we know Mark Few likes to play. If you're a grad transfer and you come to Gonzaga, you're probably going to start or be that 6th man, and Rasir Bolton is in that starting lineup. And it was in that first exhibition game that his quickness and athleticism just jumped off the page. I mean, he's going to be able to push the ball, but he's also going to be able to be that lockdown defender that we've seen Mark Few and this coaching staff kind of have with those grad transfers for the last 4 or 5 years. So he is a very exciting piece for this Gonzaga team. Tell me just about that matchup. Jones, Rasir, Bolton. To me, it's fascinating. You got a kid who can shoot it lights out from three. You got a guy in Bolton that wants to get to the rim, and he can shoot as well. We saw in that Dixie State game that, like, we're wondering, and we'll get to this a little bit later on in terms of keys to the game, like who's going to step up and hit those threes for Gonzaga? Rasir Bolton might be that guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, going 3 for 4, and at time it was much needed too. Gonzaga was not shooting the ball very well before he got going, so him going 3 for 4 really helped the Zags offense get going. But you mentioned his speed and his ability to push the ball up the court. Texas fans, if you have not watched him, he has elite speed. I mean, this is a guy that had 21, 8, and 6 against Baylor last year when he played for Iowa State. So he's seen good teams before. He's seen good defenses. Not a guy that's going to get rattled by a big moment either. So it's going to be very interesting because he's not going to be a guy that looks to take 6 threes a game. He's going to take them if they're open. But he is going to attack the rim. And you look at, kind of the matchups between Texas bigs down low. And that's really where it's going to come down to is can they keep these guys away from the rim? Can they get back in defense? It's something that Chris Barrett is preaching this week.
Moving on to kind of that small forward position, and for the Longhorns, that's going to be Courtney Ramey coming out on that starting lineup. Senior, he's got 74 starts through 3 seasons, a 2020-2021 third-team All-Big 12. He averaged 12 points per game, almost 4 assists and 3 boards a game last season. Shot 41% from 3, close to 5 attempts per game. And he went 4 or 5 in that game versus Houston Baptist. So another guy who can shoot the 3. You're starting to hear this reoccurring theme of what it might take for Texas to beat Gonzaga. And on the other hand, Julian Strawther. I mean, this was a kid that all off season, at the end of last year, I said this in our Gonzaga season preview, I thought that he should have been getting minutes even in the national championship game. You could just see something clicked at some point late February into March that he started to really contribute for this team. I think he was ready. He gets the whole offseason after sitting behind an All-American and Corey Kispert to work on his game. And I said this in the season preview that I think he's going to end up being the primary scorer on this Gonzaga team, which is a very hard thing when you have so much talent. And we saw it in that Dixie State game when Dixie State got that down to about a 10-point game with 12 minutes left to go. And who stepped up? Who went on? I think he scored maybe 8 straight points for the Gonzaga Bulldogs. It was Julian Strawther. And so he's going to be that guy for the Zags that if they're going to stay in this game with the 3, he's another guy that's going to have to contribute behind the arc.
Yeah, you caught me a little off guard in the season preview video when you said that. Of course, that's not me saying that he's not talented by any means, but it's more of the fact that there's so many pieces on this Gonzaga team.
He's not the most flashy name. He's not Chet Holmgren or Drew Timme.
No, but you watch him on the court, and it's that killer instinct out there, and that confidence that he's showing right now is just so obvious in every facet of his game. He had 9 points in that 11-0 Gonzaga run that stretched that lead back out. Did it at all 3 levels, hitting threes, attacking the rim. This is a pure scorer when you look at it. So definitely going to be a guy that, he has big shoes to fill. He talked about sitting behind Corey Kispert and how great that was for him. No better small forward in the country last year to learn from. And you can tell he really soaked that all in. And it was never a question of his talent, but sometimes when you have to replace a player like that, those are big shoes to fill. And you can see guys press a little bit and get outside of their game. That's not the case with Julian Strawther. He'll let it come to him, but when he gets that moment to go, you can count on him to go. And Courtney Ramey on the other side, this is a great, great guard for Texas. Yeah. You look at his percentages from 3, obviously he shot 4 or 5, like you said. It's no accident. When you watch him shoot the ball, it's no accident. It is a beautiful jumper, good mechanics on it. So he is a guy that I think if there is a sniper on this team, he's one of. There's another one we'll talk about here in a minute. It's also a very good shooter for Texas, but this is definitely going to be the way that Texas wins that game is by getting these guards going. And you saw it the first game. This is something they're going to look for. They will look and hunt those open shots, and they have the ability to hit them.
This is one of those matchups that I think is going to be a huge deciding factor in this ball game on Saturday night, 7:30 on ESPN2 is where you can catch it. But we know Chris Barrett and his defense likes to play a lot of zone. They're going to sit back in that 2-3, sometimes into a matchup zone a little bit. I expect with Mark Few's, the roster he has this year, he really can switch the 1 through 5. So I don't know how much we'll actually get to see these two guys guard each other, but it will be a big deciding factor in how this game goes down. Moving on really to the front court in this ball game, and that's where I think if Gonzaga wants to win this game and stay as a number 1 team in the country, they're going to have to not just win this battle, but win in a big way. And I'll tell you what, Texas has some guys. You go down to Timme Allen. He's the 6'6" transfer from Utah, another transfer coming in. He played 3 seasons at Utah, 2020, 2021, all Pac-12 first team selection, averaged 17 points per game. And he's going to be going against Chet Holmgren. I mean, the name has stuck. The unicorn. I think it's just the unicorn at this point. But we got a 7-footer who can bring the ball up court like a guard can, shoots the ball like a guard from behind the arc. What we saw a lot in that Dixie State game was him kind of running that high post action where, good luck. He can shoot over you. He can pass it to Drew Timme on the block. So this is a big matchup of two very different players. But I'll tell you what, whoever ends up in this front court, in this game, whoever wins the rebounding battle, whoever wins the block shot battle, that's going to go a long ways towards how this game gets decided.
It really is. And it's very contrasting. The first 3 matchups we talk about, you've got quite a few similarities in the players. This one is so polarizing because you've got Timme Allen, who has more of a prototypical small forward size, starting at kind of that 4 position, if you will, for Texas. And you look at his career, while he is a great scorer, never been a great shooter. I think he's about 29% from 3. Doesn't take a lot of them either, so he knows that's not his game. He's not going to force that. He really does typically look to kind of impose his size against smaller guards, get to the rim, got a good mid-range game, and, of course, can finish very well. And on the other side, you talk about Chet Holmgren and just the unicorn of the skill set he has, the ability to affect the game in literally every category out there. And, one of the things that I think is really interesting, again, Timme Allen wants to impose his physicality. And I was watching on Twitter, there was a clip from a Field of 68 podcast. And they had a guest on there talking about, does Gonzaga have any physicality down low? They have Chet Holmgren, Drew Timme. They were questioning the physicality. And for me, I tell you what, physicality does not equate to size. I think that's a very common misconception when it comes to basketball. There are big guys out there who you think should just be dominant, and they just never have that gene in them, if you will. Physicality is very much mental. And Texas fans, if you have not watched Chet Holmgren, whether it was in that Dixie State game or just seen highlights of him, you might see his frame and just say there's no way this guy does anything down low. Chet Holmgren is a dog. He is a dog. When it comes down to it, he will bang with anybody down there. And, I mean, I'm a skinny guy myself, man. I tell you what, you learn early. If you want to play these physical sports, you have to learn how to deal with that. And Chet is not only going to deal with it, but he's going to give it right back to you. So, very interesting matchup. Obviously, we saw Chet Holmgren just go absolutely crazy against Dixie State, tied the Gonzaga program record with 7 blocks, had 14 points, 13 rebounds, and 5 assists, 6 assists, I think it was. First player to do that in like 25 years. So, it's going to be really interesting. If Timme Allen can make life rough for Chet, that could really sway how this game goes.
And it's just a matter of time before we see a Chet Holmgren quadruple-double. I mean, it sounds crazy. It's been done once before in NCAA Division I basketball. If there's a guy to do it, it's Chet Holmgren. I mean,
yeah, he's got the skill set.
He may, when the season's over, he may own the top 10 spots in block shots in a game in Gonzaga history. He may own the top 10 spots in rebounds in Gonzaga history. You said it. After that Baylor game, the way that game went down where, Baylor shot lights out, but they also just brought an intensity that the Zags were not ready for. Chet Holmgren's that guy. He's got a fire, like you said, that this program has needed the last few years. And so it is, you watch him, you see how skinny he is for his size. Just be ready. He's got, like you said, a little bit of fire to him. Going down to the center position, this is a matchup we've seen before, and it was last year, 2 different teams, but Christian Bishop, who played for Creighton last year, played Gonzaga in the NCAA tournament versus Drew Timme, the National Player of the Year finalist. Christian Bishop's a kid that I really like his game. I remember when we did that Creighton preview, and he did not have a great game versus Gonzaga. He got his. He definitely lives above the rim. He can also bring a physicality to the court as well. He can get up, block some shots, get some boards. And then you got Drew Timme, who is, he's got the best post footwork in the country.
Undisputed.
He's a Texas kid, right? You think he's going to be riled up playing his home state team on Saturday night. But here's the thing with Drew Timme is he's that guy. If you've never watched Drew Timme's game, he's that guy that if you had the first overall pick for the YMCA, that's who you want, because he can just get buckets and he's smooth. He doesn't, Drew doesn't play above the rim a whole lot as much as he's improved his athleticism. Again, two very contrasting styles down on this front court battle.
It really is. And obviously this is the one where, this is a matchup that happened just a few months ago. So Christian Bishop is now familiar with Drew Timme. I think we both knew kind of going into that Creighton game that Drew Timme was going to have a chance to eat in that game. Bishop had just never seen anybody like Drew Timme. He doesn't look imposing, like you said, man. But I tell you what, guarding somebody with his technical ability and his footwork down low is a challenge that most people never see in college basketball. So it's going to be really interesting now. Bishop's seen that. Does he shut down Drew Timme a little bit more? How does that play out? I think the front court is really looking at this game. Gonzaga seems to have the edge in the front court. I think right now you could easily say that Texas might have an edge in the backcourt just given their leadership and their shooting ability. So this matchup right here, if Bishop can win this matchup, things get a lot tougher. But Drew Timme, I think, will again have a great game. It's just he's so technical down low. He puts a lot of pressure on guys. You have to stay out of foul trouble, especially for Texas. You really want to run Christian Bishop as much as you can down there. So if you get him in foul trouble, it changes things a lot. So definitely going to be a matchup to watch. It's going to have a big implication on the result.
That's where I want to go next. Is a lot of times in these matchups, you say like, hey, if so-and-so could get in foul trouble, that changes the whole game. And that's actually where both of these teams, this is why both of these teams I expect to go to New Orleans, is the depth that they have. That's what it takes to make a national championship run. Definitely. And with the front court, I'll start with Gonzaga because that's, the one we know more about. That's Kaden Perry. This is a freshman out of Battleground that does not play like a freshman. He honestly plays a lot like Christian Bishop. He plays above the rim, little mini Brandon Clark, has a maturity to his game. I don't expect us to actually see Kaden get in a lot of foul trouble. A lot of times you worry about these bigs that want to jump. Kaden Perry is going to be able to come in, play meaningful minutes for this Gonzaga team, where a year ago you said, gosh, if Drew Timme gets in foul trouble, we're in a lot of trouble. And so the Zags do have front court depth, but Texas does as well. What's funny about Texas is this Texas team, in all reality, with the talent they have, is I saw it online put this way. They are an NBA G League team at this point. They really are. And the guy on their team who has really the most NBA upside doesn't even start right now for this team. That's Tre Mitchell. It's a kid that came from UMass. Gonzaga was on his short list of transfer spots that he was going to look at. But he's a kid who averaged, I think, 17, 18 points a game last year, can shoot the ball from deep. To have a kid like that coming off of your bench, I don't think Texas is going to be at 5 very long. And no matter how this game goes, I expect Texas to live in the top 1, 2, or 3 this entire season. And Tre Mitchell is going to be a huge part of that.
He really will, man. Tre Mitchell is a fun player to watch. You watch him play out there, and he's very fluid for his size. That's the thing that jumps off the screen. Maybe not an elite athlete. He's not the Brandon Clark going to dunk on everybody, but he's got a great ability to extend his range out to the 3. His mid-range is very nice as well. And he's got a sneaky little post game. He's got a good touch around the rim as well. So having an ability to bring a big like that off the bench does very much help. Now, it's a very contrasting style to Christian Bishop, and I think that's where Texas wants to keep Bishop out there as much as they can. But this is very good depth. We talked about it in the beginning of this episode already. Chris Baird knows how many starters he has on this team. He knows the level of talent. But you look back at Gonzaga, man, you got a freshman in Kaden Perry, like you mentioned, very mature. And he's a guy that will dunk on you and will contest you at the rim, so he will make life tough for guys out there. And he's not even all the depth that Gonzaga has down low. They've, of course, got Anton Watson, returning, and he had a great game against Dixie State.
Yeah, Anton Watson, a Spokane kid, born and raised, went to Gonzaga Prep. Coming out of high school, was considered by some a one and done. He's played on some of those, USA basketball team, U17, U18, a lot of experience. His career at Gonzaga has been derailed by injuries. He had some shoulder injuries his freshman season. This was really his first off season that he didn't have to rehab. He could just get in the gym, get in the lab, work on his game, and he's playing with a whole different level of confidence that we expected his freshman year. Very early in his career at Gonzaga, we said, this is a special defender. This is a kid that's allowing Gonzaga to do some things on the defensive end that we may have never seen Mark Few be able to do. Get out in that three-quarter trap press, cause a lot of disruptions. And what's wild to me is that has always been, while he's been at Gonzaga, the best part of his game. And watching through the exhibition games and the Dixie State game, he's gotten even better. I don't know if Jalen Suggs left him the keys to the anticipation on D and just being able to get into those passing lanes. But the part of his game, and this is where I think Anton Watson, he's the glue guy, he's the X factor. He's going to do all those things they may go unnoticed, but if this team's going to win a national championship, Anton Watson's going to be an enormous part of that.
Absolutely. You look at last night. I mean, it's 7 assists and 5 steals out there. That's
a quiet 7 assists.
Yeah, a quiet 7 assists and 5 steals, just exactly what you're talking about with that disruption. So this year is so big for him. He's gone through some injuries. We saw him struggle coming off those injuries. It looked like mainly struggling with kind of some confidence issues and just trusting himself and his body. You look at him play this year through exhibitions and the first game of the season, you can tell his confidence is back. He looks to be moving quicker out there. He's not hesitating on his decisions, and he will absolutely have a pivotal role in how far this team goes.
I'm going to let you here in just a second finish off this Texas roster and the guys who are also going to play a big part in this game. For those Texas fans out there that haven't watched Gonzaga play, there's 2 other guys I want to talk about. There are 2 more freshmen on this young Gonzaga team, and they're guards, and that's Hunter Salas and Nolan Hickman. 2 very different players. Hunter Salas is a kid that he is athletic as heck. He won the slam dunk competition at Craziness in the Kennel. He takes over that Joel Ayayi role in this offense. He is an elite cutter to the basket, can also be a lockdown defender. Hunter plays very meaningful minutes on this team, can shoot the ball a little bit as well. And then Nolan Hickman is Andrew Nembhard. You're going to see Andrew Nembhard run the ones. He's going to come out and run the offense. Texas does more of a, which I like, Texas does more of a, they sub guys out quickly, kind of one at a time, where Mark Few's kind of gotten into this line change mentality where it really does play units together. Nolan Hickman's going to run this second unit. He's going to kind of play that Nembhard role. He can shoot it from 3, but you want to talk about a freshman who has a grown game. That's Nolan Hickman. I mean, he plays like a senior as a freshman, and I don't know how long we're going to have him here in Spokane, but if he does get 3-4 years in the program, it's scary to think how far his game can go. But those are 2 guys you're going to see play meaningful minutes for this team. It's just this whole game. It's like none of us are even going to notice when people sub in and sub out because these teams are so interchangeable. Talk to me on the Texas side. There's a couple more names that we saw last night against Houston Baptist, them put up some big numbers as well. But tell me who else on Texas is going to contribute on Saturday night.
Yeah, I mean, Texas has 3 more guys that they're going to play off their bench. And, we've talked a lot about the shooting on this team. Yep. And a guy you have to mention right away is Jace Febres. He is a sniper from outside. He might be that second or third guy off the bench, just depending on rotations for that given night. But he shot 2 of 3 against Houston Baptist. He's been kind of the career shooter for them as well. He's improved his 3-point percentage every year, shooting over 37% last year. I look for that to go up again this year. So very good guard right away. Again, kind of reminds me of Flagler off the bench for Baylor last year. Kind of that guy you might forget about, but when he comes in, he has that ability to spark another run for that team.
Yep.
That can be pivotal for them. And then you've got another Kentucky transfer actually in Devin Askew in that backcourt as well. He started as a freshman at UK as well, averaged as well. It was just over 6 points a game, but a guy that can shoot the ball, but he's really a facilitator, and that's what I love about Askew's game is, again, knowing how much talent you have around, he's going to look to share that ball and get those other guys involved out there. And then they've got a prize recruit themselves. And Jalen Tyson, a 4-star freshman, he was number 35 in the class, so coming in just behind the rankings of Salas and Hickman. Kid. Yep, Texas kid, stayed home there as well. And we're seeing him get some early minutes. So this is a wing with good size at 6'7". He averaged 23 points a game in high school. So a guy that can, score the ball at will, especially given his size. So you look at that list of players, man, and this is exactly why Chris Baird knows how much depth he has. He's going to play these guys. And when you have that ability to run out depth with the way that he wants to play defense, that's what keeps guys fresh. That's what keeps offenses rattled. So this is a very, very talented team all the way through.
Both teams want to go 9-10 deep, but we may see Ben Gregg play a few minutes for Gonzaga as well. Ben Gregg's a kid that was supposed to be a freshman this year, enrolled early last year at Gonzaga, played very meaningful minutes down the stretch for the Bulldogs on that national championship run. He'll get some run in this game as well, I'm sure. We were texting each other during the game because Texas and Gonzaga played at the same time on Tuesday night. And we were texting each other just about, how do we think this is going to pan out? And I think what we both kind of settled on before we get to our score predictions here is that the actual formula in this game for both teams, it's not complex. It's not rocket science. You watch these two teams play, and it's really easy to come to the conclusion that you say, if Texas can shoot the three, which they made 15 last night. They made 15 three-pointers and shot 59% from the field. If they come to Spokane and do that, we may have a new number one team on Monday morning. But here's the thing with the Gonzaga Bulldogs is that they can switch 1 through 5. You look at them, you go, they got the 7-footer in Chet, and they got Timme down low. Just shoot over them, right? You shoot over the top of them. Gonzaga did turn the ball over a lot versus Dixie State. That's not going to work against
Absolutely,
Texas.
No, that has to stop.
But when you talk about shooting over the Zags, Chet Holmgren will come out to the 3-point line. He doesn't have to jump. He will block shots out at the 3-point line. And so I'm genuinely fascinated about this game. I would love nothing more than for us to get a barn burner in Spokane, a down-to-the-wire game, and then watch these teams run it back in March. But give me a couple of your keys to the game before we get to the score prediction.
Yeah, for Texas, I think it's pretty clear for Texas. You have to shoot the ball. You do not want to get into a 2-point scoring contest with Gonzaga, particularly given Drew Timme and Chet Holmgren down low. It's just not something you want to do, especially when you have talented shooters. So for Texas, take care of the ball. Don't give Gonzaga extra possessions and shoot and make your threes. Now, for Gonzaga, we want to see them shoot better than they did against Dixie State. They're not going to be a 39% three-point shooting team this year. It's just not in the cards. But they know that, and they're comfortable with that. For Gonzaga, want to see that defense locked in for 40 minutes. It's a very, very talented team on the defensive end. You've got a lot of length out there. You've got Hunter Salas coming off the bench with a 6'10 wingspan as a 6'5 guard. Chet can guard you on the perimeter. So theoretically, you say it's easy to beat Gonzaga. You shoot your threes. It's theoretical, though, because you have to do it over this defense. Offensively for Gonzaga, take care of the ball, don't turn it over. And for me, that's particularly in transition. You have to make good decisions in transition. This team is so fast and has the ability to get out and push the ball so quickly off of rebounds that I think we're seeing early they're getting themselves into bad positions going too fast. Their 90% speed is going to be faster than any team in the country, so be smart with the ball in transition. Take care of it. Stay locked in on defense. And for Texas, got to shoot those threes. It's going to be interesting to see how it pans out.
The best way to beat his zone, and we know Chris Baird's going to come out and play his vaunted zone, is you don't let him get set, right? And so I believe that it all starts on the defensive end for Gonzaga in this game. I think really the only way for them to beat this upper-class Texas team that's going to create a real challenge for them is for them to take a page out of the Texas playbook and play a great game on the defensive end, cause turnovers, push the ball up court, not let them get set. If this turns into a half-court game, Texas is going to win this ball game, especially with the tempo.
Absolutely.
If Gonzaga can get out and run, that's how they do knock off Texas Saturday night and keep that number one ranking for another week. Let's get into your score prediction. What do you have for Saturday night?
It's going to be a good game, man. Much like you said, we want to see a close game. I very much think we will. I just don't see either of these teams getting, blown out by any stretch. So I think it's going to be close down to the wire. I think we're going to see some second half lead changes as well late into that half. I do think Gonzaga is going to pull this out. Personally, for me, Drew Timme down low is just too much. We saw what he did last year against Creighton and Christian Bishop. I think he has another great game. I think Chet causes some issues as well. Gonzaga's going to hit some free throws late, pull away, 82-76, Zags win.
I've got 87-85, Zags on top, and I'll even go as far as this. I don't think this is going to be a game that we see go back and forth. I think both teams are going to go on runs. I think this isn't going to be them just trading buckets for 40 minutes. I think we're going to see Texas get hot, hit some threes, go up by 8-9 points, and then we're going to see Gonzaga go on a run, get some steals, push the ball. Both teams can score very quickly, but I think it's going to come down to who has the ball last. I really do. Zags 87-85. Let us know down in the comments what your score prediction is, things that you're looking forward to in this game. We're very close to that big milestone of 1,000 subscribers, so if you haven't yet, please do subscribe, like the video, let your friends know that we've got some quality college basketball content going on here at Upper Left Sports. But Saturday night, 7:30 p.m. on ESPN2, the battle takes place between Gonzaga and Texas at McCarthy Athletic Center.